and I'm just so like oblivious to is like monetizing off of YouTube. Like,
Yeah.
and it feels like YouTube channels are so hard to like actually build to like
Because
Yeah.
a massive number.
There's so much
Yeah.
competition, and so-
Yeah, we have some friends that do YouTube, and Taylor recently like learned what they make, and he was like, how? Like, that doesn't even
Why
like
haven't
make
I
sense.
been doing YouTube?
Where's my
I know.
YouTube channel?
Chad Franke's recent appearance on the Squeeze podcast has created waves, as the former 8-passenger star finally opened up about his life behind the lens of his family's once popular YouTube channel. For the first time, Chad went in depth about what it felt like growing up with a camera constantly on him, how it affected his mental and emotional well-being, and how his mother, Ruby Franke, played a dominant role in controlling what was seen and what wasn't. The interview was deeply personal, filled with raw emotions, and unveiled a side of Chad that fans had never seen before. The podcast itself is hosted by actor Taylor Lautner, best known for playing Jacob in Twilight, and his wife, who's also named Taylor. To avoid confusion, they refer to each other as Boy Tay and Girl Tay. Their podcast, The Squeeze, focuses heavily on mental health and the challenges of real life, blending Taylor's experience in the entertainment industry with his wife's nursing background and her own journey with mental health. With a mission to break down the stigma around emotional struggles, they offer a space for guests to be vulnerable, and Chad took full advantage of that. During the episode, Chad was asked about the early days of 8 Passengers and how quickly the family channel grew. He explained that within about 2 years, the YouTube channel took off and started bringing in serious income. Boy Tay reacted with surprise, admitting he had only recently learned how much YouTubers and content creators can make. Girl Tay jokingly pointed out that even though they themselves are already part of the creator economy with their own successful podcast YouTube channel, her husband still acts like he's new to the scene. The irony wasn't lost on Chad or the audience, especially considering The Squeeze has more than 181,000 subscribers and raked in nearly 850,000 views in just the last month. Chad then talked about what it was like having his entire childhood documented for millions of people to watch. When asked if he was aware, at the time, that his life was being made public, he admitted that he didn't fully understand the weight of it while it was happening. But what stood out most was his description of how the filming worked. He said that family vlogging doesn't operate with a strict shooting schedule. Instead, you're constantly filming your life as it happens. And if something important occurred while the cameras weren't rolling, you had 2 options: miss the moment or recreate it. In the case of 8 Passengers, very few moments were missed. Almost everything was captured and shared, making their home feel less like a sanctuary and more like a movie set. He elaborated further, revealing how much pressure he felt to perform for the camera. He said that over time, he became aware that certain reactions and conversations were influenced by what would keep viewers watching.
I think I liked it because I
Okay.
realized that, looking through the comments, that people liked me and liked what we were doing, and they liked the videos, and I think I attached onto it pretty fast.
Yeah.
It wasn't like fame. It wasn't like, oh, I'm famous or I'm super popular, but getting the attention, I liked it
Yeah.
as a kid, and so I'd say I knew what I was doing in the videos, and I knew how to grab people's attention. And
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. So.
Yeah.
Makes
I think as a child, I had a very normal childhood, like from the age 8 to 14. I think I had a very good, still hang out with friends, and you can have your private life, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. And but yeah, that's a really good point. Like I said, when you have to re-say everything you do, or you go and have fun with friends, and then you have to kind of repeat everything over again.
Yeah.
When you talk about it, it makes me realize how much I was living life on repeat, just talking to the camera. It's like the people behind the camera was also my mom. I was talking to my mom, telling her about my day, but I was looking at the camera. I think when it comes to entertainment, if I was just to like live my everyday, no drama, no pain, nothing, that's not very good content. So
Yeah.
I think my mom knew very quickly that if even if someone like fell and hit their head, or if I had a bad day at school, or the principal called me into his office,
Yeah.
that's drama. That's, that's pain, that's content. Even if someone like fell and hit their head, or if I had a bad day at school, or the principal called me into his office,
Yeah.
that's drama. That's, that's pain, that's content. And I think she really knew that and fed off of it. So the camera would mostly come out when something entertaining was happening, or even if I was in pain, or if I fell, or got in trouble, that was good content for her.
Yeah.
And I think in a way it was also very, very bad parenting not to set the camera aside and just focus on me.
Yeah.
The authenticity of family interactions began to fade, and it often felt like real emotions were being pushed aside in favor of what made good content. This became especially painful when he was going through tough moments and felt those experiences were used more as entertainment than addressed with genuine care. The hosts then asked Chad whether he ever tried to push back, whether there were times he didn't want to be filmed. Chad's answer was subtle but powerful. He said Ruby had a way of persuading him. If he was upset, she'd turn off the camera and have a conversation with him. She'd try to calm him down, reassure him, and once he was composed again, the camera would be back on. It gave the illusion of emotional support, but in hindsight, Chad recognized that it was just another way of keeping the content flowing. Their house wasn't just a place to live, it was a set, and the family members were essentially cast members. One of the most emotional moments came when the topic shifted to the backlash Ruby began receiving online. Chad paused and asked the hosts if they had watched the Hulu docuseries that touched on the Franke family. Then he shared something he said he's never spoken about publicly. He described a moment from his teenage years, around 15 or 16, when Ruby called him a bitch. He didn't offer much context about what led up to the name-calling, but the weight of it was clear. That moment stuck with him, not just because of the word itself, but because of what it said about their relationship and the emotional environment at home. He also talked about a specific video that went viral at the time, one that showed Ruby taking the doors off of his bedroom and bathroom as a punishment. Chad said that video changed everything. The internet began to turn on Ruby. Criticism mounted fast, and soon, what had once been seen as a wholesome family vlog became a symbol of toxic parenting. The backlash snowballed. More people started speaking out, sharing concerns about the kids' well-being, and eventually, the pressure became so overwhelming that Ruby stepped away from YouTube entirely. The discussion then turned to the Hey Free Chad 2020 movement, which gained traction online as viewers became increasingly alarmed by the way he and his siblings were being treated. Chad explained that during that time, it felt like his hopes and dreams were being stripped away. He was overwhelmed, confused, and powerless to change his situation. The emotional weight of growing up under constant scrutiny, being manipulated for views, and losing control of his own narrative was too much for any teenager to carry. At one point in the interview, Chad was asked a tough but necessary question: when the internet started criticizing his parents and calling out their behavior, did he side with them or see things from the public's point of view? Considering those were his parents, it wasn't a simple matter of right or wrong. Chad explained that, during that time, he wasn't really online much.
Did you guys watch the Hulu series?
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know if you did. Okay,
Sure.
so you guys know the video with, me sitting on the ground with her, and I finally revealed that I wasn't sleeping on a bed for a certain amount of months, and pretty much taken away for 7 months, and then give it back like a couple of weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October, and they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago. When that video was posted, no joke, like that day was when the cancellation started. Like, immediate backlash on her, huge unfollowing. I don't know much about news outlets, but basically TikTok was the big push to kind of cancel her.
Yeah.
And that's when I started seeing her panic a little bit. And I remember sitting in the living room just doing my homework, and I don't think I've ever shared this before, but she ran in from her room. And do you guys swear on this podcast?
You're allowed, yes.
Okay. I don't know. And she, this is when she was peak in therapy with Jodi. And, she was very clean mouthed, and, she was very peaceful and quiet. But after that video came out and the controversy started hitting, she ran into the living room and she was like, "You bitch, you did that on purpose. You knew what you did. You knew what you were saying." And she was just yelling. And I haven't seen this side of her in a long time, like a very, very long time. And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I know people are upset with you." And then my dad actually came down and was like, "Ruby, you need to leave. Like, you need to get away from him. He obviously didn't plan this. He didn't plan for you to get canceled." And
how old were you at that point?
that was a big thing, at least in my eyes. And I started seeing that. And during that time, I was working with Jodi very tightly, very closely. She was my therapist. And I had like a love for her in a sense where I trusted everything she told me to do.
For sure.
And same with my mom.
Yeah.
And so when I saw everything go down, I didn't really think much of it. In fact, I actually knew how much money they were making, and I was nervous about the money. And to know that the views were going to go down and that the sponsorships were going to go down, that was kind of my main focus. Was, oh no, we're gonna lose money as
Did
a
you
family.
feel a little guilty for affecting that?
I wouldn't say guilty, because I knew that wasn't my purpose or my motive in saying the beanbag thing. I knew I wasn't trying to make them lose money, but yeah, I was nervous for my parents to lose all their income. That was my big concern.
He wasn't caught up in the wave of tweets or TikToks like everyone else. He would occasionally come across some backlash, but he didn't fully grasp how serious it had become until after a particular video went viral, the beanbag incident. That clip triggered a massive reaction across the internet, and before he knew it, people were creating a movement around him. The hashtag #FreeChad2020 began to circulate like wildfire. As the online momentum picked up, Chad noticed a shift in his mom, Ruby. She started to get visibly nervous. What had started as public criticism was quickly becoming a viral campaign, and that made her uncomfortable. In response, Ruby reportedly began hiring legal representation to try and suppress the content being posted about her and the family. She aimed to get videos taken down, especially the ones from creators who were vocal about the situation at home. Chad, even back then, was fully aware of the financial stakes. He knew just how much revenue Ruby was pulling in from her YouTube channel and from brand sponsorships. So, the fear that public outrage could affect their livelihood was very real to him. Chad recalled that TikTok was the main platform where the #FreeChad movement took off. He couldn't remember specific usernames, but he did remember a particular girl whose post gained so much traction that it eventually caught the attention of local news outlets. That post alone seemed to amplify the scrutiny. According to Chad, Ruby tried hard to shut that situation down too. Later, the conversation shifted toward his perception of everything as a teenager, if he ever felt like he should have questioned things or sensed that something was off. The hosts pointed out how hard it is to see clearly when you're raised to always obey your parents and never challenge their authority. When asked if he ever looked back and wondered how he didn't notice sooner, Chad shared that a lot of what shaped his thinking came from someone named Jodi, who frequently taught him about something she called a distortion. In her world, distortion meant you were straying from truth. It was seen as the root of all evil. Living in truth, on the other hand, was considered the path to peace and righteousness. Chad explained that he was taught to believe that even questioning criticism of his family meant he was choosing distortion, which would make him morally wrong. And that pressure weighed heavily on him. He didn't want to be seen as a bad person, especially not in Jodi's eyes. He even joked about how Jodi seemed to take a perfectly normal word like distortion and twist it into a concept she could use as control. It was almost like she branded it herself. Chad recognized now how manipulative that kind of language could be, but at the time, it felt like truth. When asked about his reaction to the Hulu documentary that covered his family's story, Chad admitted he didn't find it hard to watch at all. In fact, he was more interested than anything. He was curious how the series would frame his mom and their situation. One moment that really stuck out to him was right at the beginning, a scene showing Ruby sitting alone in her room, holding a bunch of markers and recording herself. That image really set the tone for him. Then, the interview took a more personal turn. Chad was asked about the last time he had spoken to his mom. He revealed something that really highlighted the emotional distance between them. No one from his family reached out to him after Ruby's arrest. Not a single message or call.
Looking back at the whole entire picture, I feel like at least me personally, I'm very grateful for hard life experiences. When I look back at the hard life experiences, I'm kind of grateful for them in a sense of, sometimes I'm glad my mom was a bad mom, or sometimes I'm glad that Jodi was in my life because I feel stronger because of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't say I look back and regret any of the things that, I didn't do or did do.
Yeah.
I just am grateful that everything is, everyone's safe now.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I'm in a good spot now. In my mind, the whole thing, when they wanted me to say something and I didn't even feel like it, my mindset was like, okay, this is a job. This is how I play football in the summer. This is how we get to go on vacations. I can tell she's upset with me, so I'm just going to say it because this is how we make money. So
Yeah.
That was my mindset as like an employee, so.
Hey, I'm still recording! Come on! Why am I hearing all this noise?
12:35, and we're trying to get ready for church. That's why.
When I first watched it, the opening scene before everything was her just like sitting in silence on her bed. And you know, the scene with like the markers and she was like putting it up against the camera and smiling and stuff. That was the first scene that I saw, and it was just quiet. All you could just see was her you can see in her head, she was thinking, how am I going to make this look good for the camera? And then for like 30 to 45 seconds, she's just thinking. And then she just snaps because she hears me in the basement and I'm interrupting her video, and you just see her snap. And I think they portrayed that so well because that's how it was as a kid, was like camera's rolling and everything's going great and we're having a good time, and then you say something wrong or you stutter or you don't say something she wants and she just snaps just like that. That's what it was like. Yeah.
It showed just how much separation there was between them during that period, how little connection remained. A few days after her arrest, though, Ruby did call him from jail. Chad said the call only lasted 5 minutes, and during that time, he didn't get a chance to speak at all. Ruby was crying so much that she couldn't stop talking. She told him that she had been thinking deeply about what he said in the past and that no one had ever spoken to her the way he did. She admitted she had been wrong. But then, almost out of nowhere, the conversation shifted. She started talking about money. That change in topic caught Chad off guard. When asked whether she had tried reaching out in other ways, Chad said she did send him letters, 4 or 5 of them over the years. At first, they arrived at his home, but eventually, the prison system put a stop to that because it felt intrusive. Chad described the letters as extremely spiritual, filled with religious language and talk of redemption. But to him, they didn't feel sincere anymore. He said Ruby had broken his trust, specifically by using religion as a tool to manipulate, rather than heal. When Tay commented that it sounded like Ruby had weaponized God, Chad immediately agreed. That, to him, was exactly what had happened. Because of that, reading her letters felt meaningless, just a bunch of empty phrases. He also mentioned it's been over a year since he received the last one. The conversation takes a heartfelt turn as Chad opens up about how his faith and upbringing have shaped him, and how his relationship with religion has evolved over time. Tay begins by asking whether he still considers himself religious, and Chad responds that he still identifies as a Christian and holds a deep love for Jesus. But he quickly adds that the version of Christianity he grew up with, mainly shaped by his mother and Jodi, strayed far from what he believes it was meant to be. He explains it with a metaphor. Imagine being given a delicious bowl of ice cream, only to have someone dump pickles all over it. The problem isn't with the ice cream, it's what's been added on top that ruins it. That's how he feels about his faith now. The core is still meaningful to him, but he's had to work hard to separate it from the damaging teachings that were layered on during his childhood. Chad admits he's in the process of unlearning a lot of those harmful beliefs and trying to rediscover the beauty and truth in his connection with God. He also shares how he used to be judgmental toward people who vaped or smoked, automatically labeling them as distorted, a term heavily used in his home to distinguish between a truth and a distortion. Back then, he'd avoid anyone who didn't fit into the mold he was taught to accept. Now, he sees things differently.
So she was arrested, and I didn't hear from anyone at all. No one ever called me, talked to me. A week later, I get a call from her. And I was with my sister in the kitchen, my older sister. And so she started the tape recorder, and and I just got on, and she was very still in the mindset of what I did was right. And I was now in the mindset of what she did was wrong. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like an argument back and forth, and I was trying to help her see what she did was wrong. And we were talking in very spiritual ways, because that's the way she talks, and relating it to scriptural stories. And that's basically how we talk. Like, Mom, Jesus wouldn't do this. Mom, Jesus wouldn't do that. Jesus wouldn't hurt her kids like this. And it was the first, and I'm serious, this is the first time anyone has ever fought back on her, at least someone who's close to her. This is the first time someone has fought back on her in a long, long time. Yeah. And she told me, she said, I hope God tells you who I really am. And I immediately, my red flag started clicking, and I was like, okay, she's still she's still in this bad mindset.
He's allowing what he once called a distortion into his life, not as a sign of rebellion, but as a way of being more human, more open, and more compassionate. For him, the foundation of everything now is simple: loving people exactly as they are. When asked if he remembers having any positive childhood memories, Chad says he does, but he's blocked out most of the time before Jodi came into their lives. He says people often approach him, referencing old YouTube videos, and he can't even remember them. It's like those years have been erased from his memory, a sign of just how overwhelming things got. Still, he recalls having genuine, happy moments with his siblings and even with his parents, back before the focus shifted entirely to content creation and public image. Once Jodi became involved and YouTube took over, everything began to change. But those early memories, untouched by manipulation and pressure, still feel warm and full of love. Tay points out how remarkable it is that Chad has found it in himself to forgive his mother, especially considering his age. She says that even people decades older often struggle with forgiveness, and Chad offers a deeply insightful response. He explains that true healing can't begin from a place of anger. You can put up boundaries, but real healing only starts when you release the hate. They also dive into the idea of trauma and how it shapes relationships. Gurley shares that when people go through traumatic experiences together, it can either create a trauma bond or leave you unable to be around that person because they trigger memories of pain. She asks Chad where he falls on that spectrum. Then the conversation shifts again, this time toward Chad's personal growth and his journey into adulthood. He says that the phrase "free Chad" still echoes in his head. It was a call to break free from the control and toxicity of his past, and now, as he's entering a new chapter of his life, it feels like he's finally living that freedom. He's carving out his own path, living independently, and ready to create something of his own. As part of that, he shares some exciting news. He's starting a clothing brand. For him, it's not just a business venture. It's a way to let people carry a piece of his journey with them, something personal and symbolic of everything he's overcome. He says the brand will launch within the next 3 to 6 months.
And she started talking about money because a week before she was arrested, my savings account, everything I earned from the YouTube channel, wiped. Zero. No money. And to this day, I still haven't gotten that back. So everything I earned from that 8 Passengers channel, I have nothing now from it. So it's just crazy. And she finally, in that call where she was crying, she says, "I promise I'll get every penny back to you. I'll talk to my lawyer and, we're going to work through things. And, I love you. I love my parents," because she had no relationship with her parents for so long. And she finally is like, "I want to have a relationship back with everyone. And I'm super sorry." And, at the very end of the call, she said, "I love you. I got to go." And then I did say, "I love you" back, because hearing her vulnerable like that, I hadn't heard that from her ever in years. And if I know a lot of people say, she's got crocodile tears, she fakes it, but that phone call for 5 minutes, I couldn't, unless she's the greatest actress in the world. To me, it felt so real. And
you felt it was genuine.
That phone call, knowing my mom, was a genuine phone call. So that was the last time I've spoken to her. I think I liked it because I realized that, looking through the comments, that people liked me and liked what we were doing, and they liked the videos, and I think I attached onto it pretty fast. It wasn't like fame. It wasn't like, oh, I'm famous.
Within the past day, Chad even posted a video on Snapchat, officially announcing his brand. He says that social media is just something fun now. It doesn't feel like a career anymore. His focus has shifted. He's planning to pour his energy into the clothing line and step into the world of real estate, with hopes of eventually stepping away from social media completely. Toward the end of the conversation, Chad lights up when talking about his sister Sherry. He beams with pride, praising her determination and accomplishments. It's clear how much he admires her and how strongly he supports everything she's doing. When Chad was asked what he wishes people truly knew about him, beyond the narratives they've seen online, he admitted there's still one frustrating misconception that lingers. While most people are supportive, he often hears that some still think he's brainwashed, and that assumption really gets under his skin. As the interview wrapped up, Chad was given a reflective question. If he could return to one moment in his past, what would he say to his younger self? He opened up about his time as a student athlete in high school. Track and football were everything to him. He was ranked among the top 5 sprinters in Utah by his sophomore year, and he had dreams of breaking records and running at the collegiate level. But everything shifted when Jodi told him he needed to quit football. She told him the sport represented a distortion, a word she often used to describe anything she saw as morally or spiritually off track. Though it was a tough pill to swallow, Chad let football go, telling himself that at least he still had track. But deep down, he sensed that it was only a matter of time before Jodi took that away from him too, and he was right. When she made him give up sprinting, it left him emotionally empty. Track wasn't just a sport for him, it was his anchor, his escape, and without it, he felt cold and lost. Looking back now, he says he wishes he had disobeyed their orders, snuck out of the house, and kept training in secret. If he could tell his younger self anything, it would be to hold on tighter to the one thing that brought him happiness and not let it go without a fight. Chad also revealed that after his mom and Jodi were taken into custody, therapy became a requirement for the family in order to begin any kind of repair. It was something the Department of Child Services recommended, and though Chad initially joined just to do his part, he ended up really connecting with it. He found it genuinely helpful and healing. One of the more painful things he mentioned was the way his mom reacted when the internet started to turn against her. Rather than taking accountability, Ruby lashed out, even calling Chad a B*TCH, just because people online began defending him. And when Chad talks about their home, he doesn't describe it as warm or safe. Instead, he says it felt more like a filming location, a set designed for public viewing rather than a place of comfort. That one statement alone paints a deeply sad picture of his upbringing, one where appearances mattered more than actual emotional safety. Thanks so much for watching. Seriously, if you made it this far, I appreciate you more than you know. If you felt something, learned something, or just enjoyed hanging out, go ahead and give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts, I read them all. And hey, don't forget to turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Take care of yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.